life. So, how many people love Mondays?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a tough crowd. Yeah, it's Monday,
I
right?
don't mind Mondays. I mean, I don't dislike
But do
this.
you look forward to tomorrow being Friday more than?
No, because it's just another day.
I was gonna say, I work 7 days a week, and
Yeah,
the day really doesn't matter.
But only for a little bit longer, right? Only for a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. So I started thinking about that, and I wanted to share with you this thing that I wanted to talk through on this Made for Monday. So I'm going to be yapping a lot tonight. I only have one point, but I believe that it's going to be encouraging, and I believe it's going to help you, because I too don't always like Mondays. As a matter of fact, and most of the time the pastors is supposed to be veg out day on Mondays, and I don't have time to veg out because it's when I'm kicking off real estate. But you don't do anything but write the message, right? So all that to say, I know sometimes it's hard for Mondays. Mondays can be a hurdle. So today I just want to talk to us about being made for Mondays, okay? So if you got your Bible, or if you want to be on the Bible app, I did get it up there. We're going to be in two places you're going to see. We're going to talk about this guy named Moses. We know who he is. We've heard about him a lot. We're going to be in Exodus 4 and this wonderful book called Numbers, believe it or not. And so, we're talking about this Made for Mondays, a little bit about Moses. We know his story. He was the Prince of Egypt, right? Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston sang a beautiful song. So we knew that about that, right? He was the Prince of Egypt. We know what was happening, and I want to go ahead and say this, and I'll probably, as we go, I know this won't be out, more than a time of ever when folks are willing to kill unborn babies, Moses is a sign of one that was not unborn, that was not killed. I don't know where you are on the stance of that. Honestly, biblically, I'm telling you, if you hate someone in your heart, it's just as much as murder. So sin is sin. But right now, if we aren't willing to speak the truth, then we can't. God has a plan for all of those things. We don't hate people who have had an abortion. We walk with families through it. And if we really want to see a difference in our culture, we don't need to be on Twitter getting on everybody about it, or Facebook, or going after everybody about it. If we just love single ladies right where they were, even in the midst, if they found out they were pregnant, then I promise you abortion wouldn't be an issue. So I'm saying all that to say Moses is a sign of that, and Moses is one that wasn't aborted at a time when the king was trying to kill all the Jewish babies, if you remember, right? And so then Moses is told by God, hey, you're going to lead my people out of Egypt, you're going to be this awesome thing, and all of a sudden Moses is so excited, he's so ready for his platform. He goes and murders an Egyptian. The Jewish people get mad at him. All of Israel gets mad. He goes and roams in the desert for 40 years. And so, when we're talking about being made for Mondays, he roams in this desert for 40 years, and all of a sudden, he runs into the burning bush. And God reminds him what he called him to be. So when we talk about being made for Mondays, we're going to pick up here in Exodus 4, verse 1 through 4, because after God calls him what he's supposed to do after this burning bush, I saw this story. I was reminded of this story, and I know we've heard it, but hang in here with me because I think that it's going to be important, because not only are we going to talk about being made for Mondays, we're going to be talking about this is more than just a stick, if you will. So Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? How many of you know that God's created you for something and called you to something, and fear is the first thing you feel? Like right when you do it, right? And we think that we're the only ones that feel it. Like we think we're the only ones that have it, right? So here's the thing. Moses is showing right here, we aren't. The Lord said to him, what is in your hand? A staff, he replied. Some versions call it a stick. Then the Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses throws it on the ground and it becomes a snake. And he ran from it. Who wouldn't run from that? Like if I saw that, like it became a snake. Like what in the world? Like I'm gonna pet it. Like I'm not the crocodile hunter. I'm not running around here like, crikey. Like I would run. I would be so afraid. Like all of a sudden. So God tells him to throw his stick on the ground. It turns into a snake, and he ran from it, which naturally we would all do. And by the way, they believe that Moses had a stutter. I would probably stutter after that snake. That's probably when it developed. Don't you think? Like, I think part of this. So there's a snake. So remember that there's a snake. He throws that staff on the ground and he says, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out, took a hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. How crazy is that story? Like, not only did he have the fear to be what God called him to be, God said, throw down everything that's in your hand. Trust me, it becomes a snake. And all of a sudden, the snake, which if I'm grabbing a snake, I'm definitely not grabbing the tail, am I?
Mm-mm.
I want to grab the head. I want to grab the head, but see, no, God in His infinite wisdom, this is the crazy part about being made for Mondays. He says, hey, you handle the lesser end, I'll take care of the big end. I'll take care of the head. And so He picks up that snake, and that snake becomes a staff. So all of a sudden, here we are in Exodus 4, and we started thinking about this. And this is the thing that I want to tell you. I was writing down some notes. I'm trying to make sure I got some cool things to tell you about this stick here in a minute. But some things I want to tell you is so many times I would be like Moses in this moment and be like, all I got's a staff. That's just a staff, man. I just got a stick, God. There's no way. You're calling me to lead millions of people out of slavery. I just got a staff. I'm a shepherd, dude. Like, have you seen what I do? Like, hanging out with my father-in-law. We're dancing. But that in the Deep Southern Baptist Church, like, dancing. There's some dancing going on. Like, all I have is what's in my hand, and it's a staff. And I started thinking about this story and think, don't we all just try to line up everything we have to do first before we actually step into all that God's created us to be? Like, we think, I can't be all I can be in this job because I'm not in this position, or I'm not in this place, or I don't look this way, or I don't talk this way, I don't sing this way. So there's no way God can use me, because there's just no way. Like, all I have is a stick in my hand. How many folks feel like all they have is a stick in their hand, right? And I would be so afraid, like, my stick would be like this Amazon Basics knockoff Bic stick pen, if you will. Like, that's the stick I have in my hands, this itty bitty small stick in my hand. And I would tell God, hey, you can't use me to do all that. There's no way. And what I want to tell you today is God's proof over and over in His Word, as we're going into Mondays and we're understanding how we're made for Mondays, you don't have to have it all together to be able to do what He called you to do. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the best voice to sing the song. You don't have to have the best word to sing the song. You actually don't have to take the best notes in your journal. You don't have to read the Bible the right way. You don't have to read a certain version. You don't have to be perfect to do what God's called you to do, but so many times that's where we get stuck, isn't it? And I want to tell you, the very fear that you have of God, what God created you to do, is normal. The thing that scares me the most is when I talk to pastors and I ask them about what they're doing and they don't tell me that they're not scared out of their mind. Same thing in real estate. Because if you're afraid, yes, you can't stay fearful long, but it just means you care to me. It shows that there's something bigger going on. You're trying not to make a mistake. You're actually committed to doing it. But if you're not scared to death of what God's called you to do, then maybe you're just trying to hang on to that staff. So tonight I want you to throw it to the ground. If you know, you know. But throw it to the ground, right? Like, throw it to the ground. So now all of a sudden we get this. Moses picks up this stick after he's been in the desert for 40 years. You see, when he left Egypt, he didn't have the stick, right? We get so mad when we're in deserts and in seasons where we're in loss, or our dry seasons where we don't hear from God. I will submit to you, maybe that dry season is where God is setting up something incredible, where He's going to give you something to pick up that He's going to use in a mighty way. Because the thing is about that stick that was so important, that's his staff. That staff goes with him everywhere he went. Every time you see Moses from this moment forward, anytime he's with Israel, he has that staff in his hand. Like we hear the story about him defeating the Amalekites, the staff is in his hand. As he's walking through, remember when he goes to Pharaoh, he walks up to Pharaoh, and all of a sudden this same miracle that happened before, he goes up to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, "What do you want, crazy man? I haven't seen you in forever," right? Like he's looking there, it's his brother, he's saying, "What do you want?" And he says, "Let my people go." You know, like he's got that ready to go, right? Like he's got it, and he's got this staff in his hand, and it becomes a snake again. And I don't know if you remember the story, but it becomes a snake, and then Pharaoh and all of his little magicians come together, and they say, "That's cool, dude. I can do the same thing." A lot of times I want you to know there are going to be many people in your life that replicate the calling God has placed on only you to try to be just like you, and they're missing the point. Because what happened with that snake is all of a sudden that snake ate all those other snakes, remember? Like it came out of the floor, all the magicians had all these snakes, and all of a sudden that snake, that was that staff, was eating all the others. And I can imagine it sitting there, and what I want to tell you is if you're living in the calling of God, that God's created you to be, and who He made you to be, I see those little snakes as shame, guilt, fear, condemnation, all of those things in your life. That thing in your hand just just eating it all up. That snake. It's crazy. It's crazy. So you say, Tyler, you've been railing for a minute. So I'm going to give you the one point, and then we're going to talk. Because we're made for Mondays. And it's not really hard. You've heard me say it before, but it's this. The dream God has placed in your heart, which is your calling, the thing He made you to do, He will reveal to the world by what He places in your hands. That's one big long point. I know you're used to me having like three, like four word points.
That's why you can't have more than one.
Yes, on this one. On this one for sure. For sure on this one. I mean, I'm looking at all these. Looking at all these things. The dream that God has placed in your heart, which is your calling, He will reveal to the world by what He places in your hands. So in other words, all these things in your life, that stick that He has that He's placed in your hands, that staff, that rod, is the thing that He's going to use to reveal to the world. We handed on this Sunday about Nehemiah. We've all heard the story of Nehemiah. God used what He put in his hands. So look at Moses here. Moses is the same thing as what he put in his hands. So I started wondering about this. You know, Moses goes to that burning bush. Side note, and I wrote this down, so I said, man, I want to share this too. When Moses went to the burning bush, remember God told him to take his sandals off because he was on holy ground? Maybe God's telling you that you're on holy ground, and instead of running from Him anymore, He's just trying to get you to take your shoes off. So will you see that when you're made for Monday, the place that He's planted you, the workplace that He's put you in, the school, everywhere you are, or wherever He's calling you to in these next seasons, understand He may be getting you to take your shoes off so you stop running. Like right here, you can take your shoes off. I love it. We can get comfortable. We can get comfortable around the Word of God and get comfortable around the fire. It's exactly what happened with Moses before He told him to pick up that staff and go. How crazy is that? So, the dream God has placed in your heart, your calling, He will reveal to the world by what He places in your hands. So obviously it's going to beg the question, what's God put in your hands? And we'll dive into that in a minute. But I started going into this. The reason I wanted to share this story for you and with you when we started talking about Mondays is I don't see a snake much more in the Word of God after that, do you? I mean, Paul was attacked by a snake. We see that a lot of times. Paul was attacked by a snake, and a lot of times folks will, in some places, mountains, if you go, they'll talk about a verse in Mark. I think it's like Mark, 16 or 17, where it says that they'll be bitten and nothing bad will happen to them. But Paul does that. You see, the thing that I started looking at in that Paul story, I don't know if you remember, he was shipwrecked in Malta, and this asp, as you will, we like saying asp a lot, right? Like this asp, if you will, came up and bit him. But what was he picking up? Sticks to make a fire. But yet they thought he was a god at the time. He got to share the gospel with them. The snake didn't harm him, but that's about the only few times I see a snake in Scripture anymore. Because you see, in the Old Testament times, if there was a snake, it actually meant blessed. Think about Egypt. Snake imagery everywhere. But what's crazy is in the Bible, we don't see the snake that way because we know who the snake really is. Because when we go back to the garden, we know who the serpent is. But at the same time, to the world, that serpent represented something else. But the thing that I wanted to remind you of, the thing I've had to remind myself of is, I wonder if sometimes God doesn't bless us the way we want Him to bless us because we're so worried about the snake experience that we just forget to hold the stick in our hand and the rod in our hand. Because that rod, that staff was used by Moses and other things. Remember, Moses, what did God tell him to do when he went to the Red Sea? Raise his staff, right? What did He tell him to do when they defeated the Amalekites? Keep your hands up, keep that staff in your hand, or Joshua was going to get defeated. Hey, when the water was bitter and Israel was in the desert, He said, take that staff and touch the water, and the bitter water will become sweet. Now, if I walk around with some sticks and a little bit on some well water here, y'all love me. But like, the bitter water becomes sweet. Also, hey, remember when Elijah and Elisha come along, like what ends up happening is when the widow's out there and her sons is going home, what is she gathering? Is sticks for her last meal. Sticks to make a fire. When Elisha is sitting there and they're building a house for God, they're building a house, the prophets are trying to build a school basically. They have a borrowed axe, and one of the cool things, you know, I'm an Elisha guy, so I love this story. One of the cool things are the axe, well, they were chopping down trees and the axe got thrown into the Jordan, and God says, take a stick, touch your hand to it, and the axe floats up. stick. A stick. We say it's just a stick. It's just a rod. What God's put in our hand is just this little thing. There's no way that this little ordinary thing could be important. But yet all the way through, I don't see the snake anymore because the snake was a really cool experience. That's the one you tell your friends about, isn't it? When the stick became a snake. But how many times you just talk about the stick? The ordinary thing. Not the perfect thing. The day in, the day out, the grind, the ordinary, the Monday. How many times you talk to your friend about what's happening on Mondays? Because see, God's put this thing in your heart that only you can do, and the only way that He can let it grow is by taking what's in your hands and revealing it to the world. Which brings us to Numbers 17. It's a really cool story. Numbers. You thought I was going to say number 17, my point. That was great. Is there 17 words? That'd be even better. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. We're out there. I can't count past the fingers and toes. So, number 17. This is what matters with a stick. This is why the stick is so important that you have in your life. The rod, the staff that you have in there. The ordinary, everyday thing that you have in your life. Number 17. I don't know if you ever read this story or you came across this story, but I was getting ready for this. It just blew my mind what happens with a staff in our life. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and get 12 staffs from each of them. Get 12 sticks from each of them. One from every leader of each of their ancestral tribes. Write their name of each man on his staff. He's got your name on the staff. On the staff of Levi, write Aaron's name. Moses' brother. That's how we roll. For there must be one staff for the head of each ancestral tribe. Place them in the tent of meeting in front of the ark of covenant of the law, where I met with you. The staff belonging to the man I choose will sprout, and I will rid myself of this constant grumbling against you by the Israelites. So the Israelites were trying to say, who's the head priest going to be? Who's the pastor going to be? So the deacons are fighting. And so what happens is everybody writes their name on a staff. And God says the one that buds and grows is the one I pick. Sticks. Sticks. They're laid in front of the Ark of the Covenant. So Moses spoke to Israel, the Israelites. Their leaders gave them 12 staffs, 12 sticks. And their leaders gave them that, one for the leader of each of their ancestral tribes. And Aaron's staff was among them. Moses placed the staffs before the Lord in the tent of the covenant law. The next day Moses entered the tent and saw Aaron's staff, which represented the tribe of Levi. That's how we know we have Leviticus, the Levites, right? Aaron had not only sprouted, but had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. Hey, it was healthy. Then Moses brought out all the staffs from the Lord's presence to all the Israelites. They looked at them, and each of the leaders took his own staff. The Lord said to Moses, put back Aaron's staff in front of the Ark of the Covenant of law. It must be kept as a sign to the rebellious. This will put an end to their grumbling against me, so that they will not die. Moses did just as the Lord had commanded him. The Israelites said to Moses, we will die. We are lost. We are all lost. Anyone who even comes to the tabernacle of the Lord will die. Are we all going to die? Yeah, probably. Yeah, pretty sure. So, that being said, let me tell you why I wanted to share this story with you, why I thought this was so crazy, and why this was so cool to me. Not just what's in your hand so important. Even on Mondays, those Monday things that seem so boring, so pointless, are actually the things that God's using to make you be all He created you to be. And so the reason I'm telling you this tonight is number 17 is a cool story. I just want you to picture what's happening. All these people are gathering sticks, and they place it in front of the Ark of the Covenant and say, who's going to lead us? And this supernatural thing happens with this stick. Isn't it crazy? I don't know if you know this about the Ark of the Covenant, but there were 3 things in the Ark of the Covenant. There were the 10 Commandments, which we know is the law. There was a jar inside of it that collected manna when they were roaming around for 40 years in the desert, so that God could remind everybody not only is He the law, but He is their source of life. That manna is there. There's one more item He said had to be there. We just read about it. Aaron's rod, his staff. It had to be kept close. It was always in the Ark of the Covenant. Isn't that crazy? So in other words, they have this mundane thing. This little staff, this little almond branch, had to be in the middle of the Ark of the Covenant. Something we all pass by probably daily, a branch, a stick, something that doesn't matter to us, something that seems dead, something that seems pointless is the same thing that God uses. And here's what I want to tell you. The reason that's so important is He's the king of taking dead things and bringing them to life, isn't He? Because God loved us enough that these sticks all the way through, we know this, but here's the thing that we know that we're made for Mondays is God loved us enough that He sent His Son down to be a stick, an ordinary thing, to die on 2 sticks, to raise everyone to life, to be that one almond branch that bears fruit and comes back to life. But it was just a stick. Just a stick. We just say, God, I just have a stick. I just have these things in my hands. I don't know. There's no way that I could use it, but the thing that He's created you to do is exactly for Monday. He created you for Mondays. He created you for Tuesdays. He created you for Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday, and Sunday. He created you for all of this. But what's in your hands? Are you willing to use it? Because sometimes in our hands, we get extremely anointed and blessed, and we have that snake experience. And all we do is focus on the snake experience, that we miss everything else in between. That's a dangerous place to be. As a matter of fact, I would even move to say that some people in the world are twice as blessed with half of what they have than having double portion of what they have by that snake experience happening every day. And I think God knows that. He's just looking and asking, are you willing to give up your stick? Because the thing that I saw in this story with Moses is it wasn't anything he earned. He didn't do anything to get that stick. He just laid that stick down. It's like Jesus did for us. Just laid it down. And I think God's reminding us that if we want to live in our calling, our pride isn't going to work. Our checklist isn't going to work. Our great big things that we want to accomplish isn't going to work. Just laying it all down to Him. Because all those 12 tribes did was lay those 12 sticks down and said one of them's going to grow. That's the one we'll follow. So, the reason I wanted to share all that with you tonight that's really crazy is most days are going to be stick days. Aren't they? Not sick days, don't get excited. I'm stick days. Not every day is going to be a snake day. The question is, that I love about this story, is once the stick becomes a snake, will you trust it when it becomes a stick again? Can you be seeking God when you're on the top of the mountain as much as you can in the deepest of the valley? Will you seek Him just as much then? Will you seek Him when your name's not headlining the tour as much as it is when you're the one sitting in the stands? Will you worship God so much it doesn't matter? Like I have to ask myself this even as I get to do what I get to do. Would I worship God as much, and I get to ask leaders this too, would you worship God as much if you didn't have a microphone on Sundays as you do when you don't? Because if you're only willing to worship Him when you got a microphone on Sunday, you're looking for the snake experience. And last time I checked, snakes always bite. And I'm not Paul. I'm not Paul. And I ain't trying to tempt one to bite me. And God loves me enough that He says, use that stick in your hand. And trust me, it'll become a snake when I tell you to throw it down. And that platform that I've called you to be on, I'll call you when to throw it down. I'll tell you when to raise it up. But at this moment, you just got to trust me. Stop chasing the snake. Otherwise, I'd lay it down on the ground. Okay, snaky, here, snaky, snaky. Like I'd be trying to get it, right? And so my question is, maybe you don't know what God's called you to do. Maybe it's because you're chasing the snake. Would you just trust it's just a stick and it's just as fine as it could be? Because every day there are going to be a lot more stick days than there ever will be snake days. Matter of fact, that's what a marriage is. It's a lot of stick days. I love doing premarital counseling because everybody's just like, hurry, we got to get married for the rapture, right? And they're so excited, they're sharing a chair. And then about 3 months in, they're just saying, Lord, please come. Like, if it be your will. Like, they got both hands in there. Like, they don't put the toilet seat down. Jesus, I don't know how many times I've got to tell them to put the socks in the freaking bin. Socks go in the bin, right? Like, all of a sudden it's that. It's because they've fallen in love with the snake more than the experience. The snake days, the days where the miracles and all of that happen as opposed to the stick days. But the stick days, what make the snake days so incredible. So as you go into Monday next week, as we go into this week, as we're getting ready for what God's called us to do, I just want to say, God's probably calling you to something. Are you running in fear from it? And I hope you see the burning bush in front of you and you take your shoes off and listen to what God has to say to you. Do you look at what's in your hand? Do you just say it's just a stick, just a piece of a tree, or would you understand how much that tree means? And when you do, the world will call it a dead stick, but you'll get to talk about how our Savior went up on those two sticks to die for us, and how we understand whether it's a snake or a staff, He loves us just the same. You were made for Mondays. So my questions for us tonight are this. How is your work your primary mission field? What are some of the ways that you can start to live out your faith in the workplace? Made for Mondays, right? How can you live that? How can you take your staff, if you're a leader, how can you take your staff and see that that's your mission field? Hey, outside of that, what comes to mind when you hear the word calling? What do you need to confront to step into your calling? I hope I put that in there correctly. I might have spelled things wrong, but if I put comfort on there, just laugh. What do you need to confront? Because see, Moses ran for 40 years to do from what God called him to be, and what God called him to do. God still gave him a staff in that time. That staff made all the difference. So maybe you're running. Stop running. Just lay it down. Maybe you think you just got a stick. Understand, God will make it a snake when He calls it to be. Otherwise, be happy you got a stick. Isn't that fun?